to call roll and if you don't mind, please reply with a here, a yay, or what have you. Larry Bradley? Did Larry drop off?
No, I hear you. I'm here.
Ross Bradley?
Here.
Myosha Crawford? David Dickinson?
Here.
Norman Garrett? Norman's muted, but I see him.
Here.
Tyler Gregory?
Here.
Nathan Little?
Here.
Lee Malcolm?
Here. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year. Moving straight to the city administrator update.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, as we all know, COVID's been hitting Monroe and Walton pretty hard. Staff cases have certainly increased around here at the director level all the way down for sure. So we're adjusting to that as best we can. It's going to be a challenge over the next couple of weeks, I foresee, before I think things settle down a little bit. The mayor may touch on this a little bit more later, but just of note, we had a good conference call with GMA today. And one thing that, I picked up on was our region of Northeast Georgia shows, as of yesterday, that we have an ICU capacity of 96%. I mean, that's being used. That's the utilization. And of that is 43% being COVID patients. So that's a little bit alarming, and that's just kind of where we're at right now, which is one of the reasons we're obviously keeping our front lobby closed. We're only doing meetings by certain appointments if people are having trouble submitting things in other ways and formats. We'll continue to try to be as business friendly as possible through all this, but through it all, we have gained a lot of efficiencies. And we'll continue to do so, so long as we, it doesn't cost us too much more money. So we're always trying to figure out better ways to utilize our web presence and things of that nature for forms and whatever it may be. But the business of the city has been continuing on. The services have been provided, and they will continue to be provided through this challenging time. That's all I've got right now, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Probst. Are there any questions for Logan? Hearing none, we'll move to the central services update. Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Couple quick things I was going to point out. Purchasing for 2020. Our P-card system we put into place about 3-4 years ago. We are at pretty much a 5-to-1 ratio when it comes to spending on a P-card versus a purchase order. So we have more than adequately transferred over the process of doing that, which then in turn gets us back rebates from the state of Georgia at the end of their fiscal year. So kudos to everybody that's jumped on board with that. In 2020, our grounds guys, and that's 4 guys, actually picked up 18 tons of trash around and in the city. So they, by all means, carried their weight. A couple other little quick things. Leaf season is going to continue through January. I think everything has went very smoothly this year with the addition of new leaf truck and a leaf trailer that council allowed us to purchase several months back. Our garbage truck, the new one that was requested, actually came in last week and is already in use, if I'm not mistaken. Police station, right now we're waiting on flooring. Those last little components, we're just at a delay right now of getting things. Everything's delayed, things are changing. With COVID kind of ramping back up, I think that's causing us some problems too. And the only other thing of note I wanted to make mention of, we had the first part of our inventory, or our audit here yesterday. First part of our audit was the inventory of warehouse and materials, and for the 14th or 15th year in a row, we had 100% accuracy. So that's a good thing of note, and good job by those guys. So I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Are there any questions for Chris? Hearing none, we'll move straight to committee updates. Finance, Tyler Gregory. Tyler, did you pop back on? You're muted, so I'm going to go and shoot it to Logan. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll go ahead and step in for Ms. Thompson, who's out today. A couple highlights here. Of course, this report's through November 30th, 2020. I do want to note that even though it's through November, that through 12/31, we received 91.2% of our budgeted property tax collections, which is a little bit lower than expected. However, we do expect some additional distributions in 2021 that will easily make up that difference. I think it's just how the calendar kind of worked out for the tax commissioner and us this year. Sales taxes are still up year over year, very healthy numbers, over $200,000 per month in distributions lately. The general fund is currently at a break even, but projected to end well positive after accounting for the property taxes that'll come in. And the utility and solid waste funds, revenues exceed expenses in each of those funds. So things are tracking well there. The big news is the rollout of the average monthly payment billing, the AMP. So it will be available now. We have the criteria online. Let's see that handout. But basically, you have to have 12 months of continuous utility service with the city. The balance should be current with no past due amounts. No non-payment cutoffs within the past 12 months. And if removed from AMP for any reason, it can't be added back for a period of 12 months, because the whole idea is to capture that rolling 12 average. And you got to be in good standing with that rolling 12 so that it has a better calculation in our system. And of course, the customer must request this, but everything is available online. You can contact customer service or email anybody here to get that done. But we're excited to have that going. Of course, this doesn't mean your bill is going to be exactly the same each month. There'll be variations that'll go up and down throughout the year, but there'll be minor variations based on your service usage. A couple other items of note. The staff has begun the 2020 audit, which Mr. Bailey alluded to with inventory. This process, as you know, takes about 5 to 6 months to complete. It's a big undertaking and just part of our cycle here. And as I mentioned earlier, we're still looking for other methods to cost effectively better our customer service here. Our team's doing a great job. I can't commend them enough, but at the same time, we're always looking to improve.
Are there any questions for Mr. Probst?
Logan, on the monthly billing, do you have a record of who's inquired about this in the past that would like to do it? Do we have a way to connect with those people?
I don't have a specific list on that, no, sir. What we'll do is we'll put it out on social media. So, I mean, I think that's probably your best way to reach everybody at this point. But, you know, it is available online, and I think they're going to do something in the mailers as well.
Okay.
I think Mr. Little had a question.
I was just going to ask, when you're talking about doing the inventory, are you talking about just doing inventory of all the supplies and that sort of thing, or are you doing fixed assets also?
It's assets. The one that I'm talking about was 100% again, was the supplies and materials at the warehouse, which is anywhere from about $1 million worth to $1.5 million. We'll do the physical assets of your larger assets, your small assets, weapons and such during the month of January, but they'll match because we do it periodically throughout the year already.
Are there any other questions? Tyler, when we get this back in order, we'll get you jumping on first. But with being muted and not, we'll handle it differently. I'm going to go ahead and move to airport, Mr. Garrett.
Oh, I figured it out now. Thanks. I just want to say thanks so much, Mr. Mayor, and Rose for taking care of that for me. Hopefully I'll be able to find it again. We'll see what happens.
Chris Bailey.
Thanks.
Chris Bailey.
The quick thing of note on the airport is our bid closing was moved from December 17th to January 7th, again because of COVID and a DOT request. So this Thursday at 2 o'clock, we'll have the runway rehabilitation project bid opening. We're expecting it to come in right at budget or maybe just a little over. It's kind of hard to tell. And once we get everything and review it, and I'll bring it back to council either next Tuesday as an item of action, or I may wait till the first meeting in February for approval. Once we decide that and we set a date, the airport and the runway will actually be shut down for approximately 4 to 8 weeks. And we'll have to reach out to tenants and ground lease holders, tie downs, hangar renters, and get with them and let them know the schedule and kind of how we're going to handle everything. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
If there's no question, we're done.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Moving to Public Works, David Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Smith, tell us about solid waste.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dickinson. I first like to say I appreciate all the well wishes and the prayers during my COVID experience, but I'm feeling good and getting stronger every day. My report is short. The collection and disposal is pretty consistent with the month of October. At the transfer station, we are trending up a little less than 1,000 tons compared to last year, November 19. And the glass collection is holding steady. We did collect about a little over a ton for the month of November. And the only other thing I have is the holiday schedule for the MLK Day is posted, and we'll post it again with social media, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. But on the January the 18th, that will not be collection. On the 19th, Monday customers will collect, and on the 20th, we'll service the Tuesday and Wednesday customers. And on Thursday, the customers will be on schedule. And Mr. Bailey did mention the truck. It is in service, and we'll be back to full schedule by the end of the week. Of all our customers and partner customers. And I'll take any other questions.
All right, it appears there are no questions. Moving to streets and transportation, Mr. Still.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Just highlighting a few areas from the report. We're in the middle of, again, our winter maintenance program, coming up with remedies for fixing some of these failing streets as they come up with the pothole season. The colder it gets, the worse that's going to become. But we're staying on top of that. As Mr. Bailey said earlier, we're continuing to run the leaf truck through the month. The second truck that we've put in that route has really made a difference because we're on schedule a whole lot faster than we were in the past. Even moving into some services now that we had relied on the street sweeper for previously, using that the wagon been able to do that, and as the truck as well cleaning up some of the curbs and gutters throughout the street. And it's really made a difference, especially in our stormwater division. Those guys have had their hands full as you know, every time it rains. So it's just been trucking along through the fleet maintenance division and the sign and markings. We're going through, continuing to check the signs, keeping the signs clean and service to the city. And I'll be glad to take any questions you might have regarding the report.
It appears there are no questions. So let's move to the local maintenance and improvement grant. That's an action item. Mr. Still, are you handling that?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right.
We're seeking approval for our project list for the 2021 LMIG program, and this is where we get our bang for the buck from the state as far as doing our pavement preservation throughout the city. As you know, we didn't have a project in 2020 due to some issues on the South Madison project and rehab through that project over there. So we rolled everything into 21. What sections of South Madison that will not be covered in the completion of that project will be covered through the LMIG. If you have the project list in front of you, there's approximately 0.85 miles of South Madison Avenue that will be completed in there with milling, an inlay, patching, and striping. We'll also add East Washington Street, Pinecrest Drive, Plaza Drive, and Bryant Road onto the list for 2021. Everything except Bryant Road will be some mill and inlay. Bryant Road will just be patching and overlay. All will include the thermal striping. So we're just seeking approval on that project list tonight so we can get it turned into the state before their deadline and be ready to rock and roll with that once we get some good weather.
And Jeremiah, you have 0.83 miles on South Madison. That goes from where to where?
It's just broke up. The scope of the project over there that had the gas and the sewer it breaks South Madison up. The bulk of it of this 0.83 or 0.85 is from Spring to maybe Knight, and then the section in front of the old mill, and then from Atha all the way out to Highway 11. So there's 3 different sections that were not covered within the scope of the utility project. We'll incorporate the rest of that into it, so it's all done at one time to make sure South Madison from Spring to Highway 11 is continual.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? If not, I need a motion from the committee to approve the application as stated.
A motion to approve the application as stated.
Motion by Mr. Gregory. I need a second. I'll make the second on that. All in favor, state aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. We recommend it to the consent agenda, Mr. Mayor. That's all we have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Danny, I'm glad you're back and feeling better.
Thank you. You're great.
Moving to utilities, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Thompson, do you have a monthly report?
Yes, sir, Mr. Little. One thing I'd like to mention is December really brought our numbers back up. From March to December, before December, we were down 12, 13%. At the end of December, we were only down about 4.5% on energy usage, which is good for the department. Other electric items that are going on, we got the right-of-way cleared for the new power line up at Publix. It's a big move in that project. We're expecting them to start construction this month. So we want to finish that power line before they get started. Right now, we are working on Etten Drive for a new commercial entity. It's going to put, I think it's 5 new commercial buildings out behind Elite Storage. That would be a nice project. So we're rebuilding that line from Spring Street up to this project, which is right there at Armstead Circle. That's the name of the street. The other item on electric is we hope to get to the Parks project, the Town Green, as soon as we finish up the Publix, and it'll be nice to get down there and get that done. On telecom, we met with GOT today, and actually Meg Perkle sent me an email. They have delayed voting on the new right-of-way fee that they have been working on for a couple of years, which is great. The last meeting we had, which was last Wednesday, their staff made us aware that they plan on coming after every utility with this fee, which would be a tremendous amount of money throughout not only telecom, but electric, water, sewer, and gas. We've got it delayed. We've had some good talks with the DOT board and with the legislature, and we're going to keep pushing forward. We've got a call on Thursday, or a webinar on Thursday with a lot of the stakeholders to hopefully get this thing put to bed. Then we had our outage a couple days ago, about a week or two ago on a Sunday. Started off sort of something we'd never seen, something we weren't necessarily prepared for in our monitoring. The monitoring did not let us know that the system had failed because the system thought it was working. Throughput was going through, but it was only up to around 2 gig. Our normal traffic at that time of day is around 7 or 8 gig. So we've changed the parameters of the monitoring to hopefully give us more input into when that happens. If that ever happens again, what I'm trying to say is we'll be prepared for it. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Brian, I have a couple of questions, and I'm going to probably harass you a little bit tonight. Downtown Wi-Fi, where do we stand with that?
We just got about a month and a half ago, we got the software working. We had trouble with the provider with the software, allowing people onto it. And I'll have to ask Justin where he's at exactly with that. He's on vacation this week, but as far as I know, that software is up and running, and that moves us into installation. Now, we've been working down at our staff, our construction staff has been working down at the Joe Dixon's subdivision with all those breaks in the fiber that we discussed over the past few weeks. As soon as they get done with that, that's where they're headed.
Okay. And then the fiber to the home project is going to start in Pollock, is that right?
It's actually going to start there as our overhead project, and off of the 3 subdivisions off of Ammons Bridge is our underground. So we've got 2 phases or 2 types of deployment in the city. You've got overhead and underground, and we're using 2 different, for lack of a better word, technologies. One is a flex snap for the overhead, and the other is just direct burial and blow and bore for the underground. So those are the 3.
So when can we expect construction to start on those?
I'm trying to pull out my crystal ball. Supply from everyone is hurting. I got a bid today for some fiber for the underground portion at 13 and a half weeks is the supplied and is the expected delivery date. But we do have some material in hand. So I would hope we can get these underground ones bid out and started within the next month and a half would be my hope. The overhead, it depends on Corning and their delivery of their flex snap. We owe them a couple of more measurements, laser measurements in that subdivision. But once we get them to that, they'll get me a delivery date and I'll let you know.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Little, I think you had a question for me.
No, I was wondering if anybody else had a question for you. If not, thank you, Brian. We move on to water, sewer, gas. Mr. Middlebrooks.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Just a couple of updates on some major projects. One being that we've completed the gas main extension of Piedmont Park, or Piedmont Industrial Park. Crews working now on the Unicia gas loop. It's from Church Street to the Walmart distribution, about 3,100 feet. We get some rock today, but hopefully we'll be complete.
I'm sorry, Rodney. I can't hear you well. You sound like you're echoing. Can you be closer to the mic or something?
This thing may be too close to me. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The gas loop on Unicia Drive from Church Street to Walmart distribution. Hopefully we'll have that completed this week. Hit some rock today, but I think we're going to be able to get through it without having to bring somebody in the rock bore. Our next gas project is going to be the Southview Bolton Street main rehab. We found some bare steel over there recently on a gas leak. So that's going to be our next stop. We'll go over there and rehab those 2 mains, about 4,500 feet of 2-inch steel. We'll replace it with plastic. And then we'll jump on the Highway 186, that 26,000 foot of 6-inch gas main to complete that loop out to Morgan County. In water, we completed the loop on Poplar Street, which was it's the new Poplar Street from church around the runway there. Got that loop installed, everything's up and going on it, and then we'll be starting the Piedmont Industrial Park water extension next. And that's all I've got. If you got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Middlebrooks? Hearing none. Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
That's all we have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Public Safety, Larry Bradley.
Yeah, I think we have Andrew Dykes with us tonight for the fire department. Can you give us the report?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me all right? I'm having to use two different devices.
Yes, sir.
If you'll look, okay, thank you. If you'll look from your report for November, we had 199 incidents that we responded to, 5 of them being fires, 3 of those fires being structure fires. And I will bring it to your attention in the loss report of those 3 structure fires, which included the incident at John's Supermarket. The total losses for 3 fires totaled less than $10,000 in losses by estimation. And part of that, especially with John's, is attributed to the presence of sprinkler system that functioned as designed, which is extremely beneficial to both the property owners, the city, and us as the responding department. And just one other thing that I'd like to add that's not on the report is that we are seeing a tremendous uptick in the number of COVID positive cases that we're responding to. So everybody just be aware of that and do what you need to do to stay safe, because it is drastically increasing over the past few weeks, and we're seeing that on our end from response, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from Mr. Dykes? Okay, we'll move to the police department, and Matt McClune's with us tonight.
Yes, sir. Can everybody hear me fine?
Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, Chief wanted me to apologize that he couldn't be here. He has COVID and he's recovering from that, so I'm standing in for him today. Our response to COVID is the same as has been. Our lobby's still closed. We're still trying to minimize our contact with the public, but we're still answering all calls for service as usual, and officers are making all contacts. As a matter of fact, November, we answered 1,680 calls for service, had 9,108 area checks, calls to the PD, we had 1,610, court cases, 210, training hours, 278. We were down in our Part 1 crimes and our Part 2 crimes about 56 and 69, and our adult arrests were down also 38 for the month of November. We also conducted the active shooter training over at City Hall November 10th in November, which was a very large event for the department and combined with the City Hall employees over there. We were also able to secure 2 forklifts for the city at no cost to the city through the excess property program. And I guess we just had to send some guys down there and go pick that up. So we were able to secure those to help get settled into the new police department. Our narcotics unit or joint operations team made 10 felony drug arrests in the month of November, 2 of those being meth cases. They recovered 5 stolen firearms off the street, and they executed 1 search warrant. And that's all I have. If anybody else has any questions.
Okay. Any questions from Matt? Logan, just not really part of the police department, but part of public safety total. I understand the courts are canceled for the month of January. Is that correct?
Not for the month, just for this upcoming court date here on the 7th. They'll take a look at the court date later in the month. I think it was the 20-something. That's still on schedule for right now, but just this upcoming one.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
January 21st, council, January 21st arraignment is still on 8:30 at municipal court, pending further order from Judge Samuels.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Move into planning and code, Ms. Malcolm.
Thank you. I'll defer to Mr. Kelly and let him know we're glad he's recovering and appreciate him being here, although I know he's not 100%.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just a few items from the period of November.
Patrick, excuse me. I think you're going to need to speak up.
I'm sorry.
I think you may need to speak up.
Let me move this a little closer. Bear with me. All right. Any better?
Yes.
Okay. Just covering the time period of November, in this report, we had 95 code inspections. A total of 29 permits were written. We had 8 new businesses get their business licenses and 3 closed during that time frame. Major projects going on are pretty much the same as we've had for quite a while. The apartment building is, we're working with them towards getting them a partial CO so that they can start occupying the main floor, since they've had some delays with their elevator provider. So we're hoping to get them away to start occupying the building, even though they're not completely 100% ready for a final CO. So that'll be just a partial. And we've got the complex at 2130 next to Arby's still ongoing, the Row still ongoing, and Monroe Pavilion, like Brian mentioned, they should be getting started this year. We talked to the contractor yesterday, and they're wanting to pull all their permits now with an anticipated start date of March. But we're hoping that once they get the permits, they'll start going vertical a little bit sooner, if at all possible. Let's see here. The city marshals removed 47 signs from the roadway and did 198 repair cleanup orders and re-inspections in that time frame. Investigated utility tampering cases, wrote 6 citations on those, and completed 8 hours of post certification training. And then the remainder of the report is in front of you. If you have any questions about it or anything I mentioned, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions from council? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Malcolm. I hope you're feeling better, Patrick.
I am. Thank you.
Mr. Bradley, where are you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on my way back from Mississippi.
Please drive safe and talk while you're driving.
Oh, I'm riding passenger. Ms. Crosby, do you mind sharing the economic development report with us, please, ma'am?
I'd be happy to. Thank you. So those photos are from the holiday season in downtown, and Martin Bozone, our city photographer, took those for us. We had really good turnout for all those events. Reports from businesses that it was a good holiday season as far as sales and traffic. So glad we made it through that. We rolled out our new Downtown Dollar program, and that's going really well. Hopefully all of you have been enjoying them as well. We're pleased that that's happened. The only other thing to note is that the Georgia Historic Trust has posted your visit to Monroe once again. It was going to be February. They have delayed it again to hopefully the summer sometime in 2021. And at this point, we have scheduled our annual downtown reception at the factory at Walton Mill on January 25th. That's a Monday evening at 6 p.m. This is when we kind of thank our sponsors and volunteers. Would love for any, we'll confirm that date once we decide for sure that we want to move forward with getting everybody together and we can spread out there and do it safely. So that's our hope. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions you may have from the report.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Are there any questions from the council? All right, that'll do it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, all. Y'all have a safe trip. Sadie, thank you. Y'all are just killing it in December. Moving to parks, has Ms. Crawford joined us? Hearing none, we'll just go straight to Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of quick updates. Pilot Park, if you've been by in the last couple of days, the fence is finally painted. That looks nice. It's kind of nice finishing touches. We have our playground equipment contractor coming out in a couple of weeks to take a look at some shade structures to go over a few of the pieces of equipment on the lower playground area. That was requested by a lot of patrons and visitors. Matthews, the additional tables and shade structures that we actually put out there are complete and in place. So we're essentially done with the first phase We're just waiting on the restroom to come in, which should happen sometime in February, we hope. And then to replace flagpole. And other than that, unless anybody's got any questions, it's just kind of business as usual. We're rehabbing little things and getting everything ready essentially for spring of the year.
Thank you, sir. Please remind me, because it looks like Brian has dropped off, to ask him about running that internet to the parks. Did I hear him?
Yeah, I'm here. I just cut my video off.
Trying to get internet to the parks. I'm getting a lot of questions from.
Well, that is part of our Wi-Fi deal, the dog park. Now that's the only one that I've thought about doing. But if you want to do any of them, it's just get fiber to the location and turn it up.
Well, I'm specifically hearing it from Pilot. I would imagine that Matthews is going to be the same way. You know, with parents with kids.
Okay.
I guess they want to surf while the kids play.
It'll probably be 1 unit for Pilot, as small as it is. If you did something like, if you get out to Matthews, it's going to be a little bit of different animal because it's just a much bigger site. But at the dog park and at Pilot, you're just talking at 1 unit. So you're looking about, without pulling the fiber, you're looking at $1,000 a site, $1,200, and then plus the fiber construction.
Okay.
But we are prepared for the dog park. That's part of it. We have that equipment on site. So if you want to do Pilot, I'll figure out where the fiber route would have to be. Pilot's a little, the dog park's easier just because it's so close to our knock.
Right. Well, yeah, take a look at both of those, and then, of course, we'll still have other parks that we need to address too, but we knock those out quickly. That'd be good.
All right, man.
Thank you, everybody. Moving to some items for discussion. We've got a public hearing on a conditional use at 919 Holly Hill. Mr. Kelly, are you still with us?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is a conditional use request for cottage food business, residential business use at 919 Holly Hill Road. It's pursuant to the use we added to that list at their request on a text amendment in the last couple of months. And they're just now that it has been added to the list applying for that use pursuant to doing their baked goods business in their home in a small portion of their home, actually limited to 700 square feet. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Mr. Kelly, I know
any questions?
In the planning and zoning meeting, someone from the audience, I think, spoke opposed to this. So next week when this comes up, will there be a public hearing?
Yes, these are all public hearings that we're going through right now.
Okay, and can you also comment on the fact that planning and zoning did not make a recommendation?
Yeah, they did not come to a recommendation on this item. Staff recommendation was for approval just based on the fact that it was really just concurrent or actually subsequent to their request to get the text amendment, and the use was added. So this request is pursuant to that. But yes, sir, I could certainly mention that next week in the meeting.
Thank you, Patrick.
If it will be a public hearing, is there an opportunity for the public to speak, or do they need to write letters if they are in opposition or in support?
No, this is a public hearing. It will be a public hearing governed by the zoning procedures law of Georgia, just like any other rezone, any other variance, any other conditional use. It will come for a public hearing. They actually will have had by the time it is voted on by you 2 public hearings. The city traditionally has always provided 2 public hearings, which is in excess of what the minimum of the law requires. They have the opportunity for a public hearing both at the planning and zoning meeting as well as at the meeting at which a vote is taken. So next week, looks like items 1 through 4 will all have public hearings for the public to speak at concerning these various things, whether it be conditional uses, variances, or rezones.
Well, my point is, does the public understand protocol from the Zoom perspective? Because if there are people that want to speak, how do they go about doing so?
To conduct the hearing remotely, we will have to make sure that we get notice out to folks on how they can speak. But I believe that when we went through this pandemic phase 1 back in April and May, we set up proper protocols, or staff did, for folks to be able to get on the meetings and to be able to speak if they wanted to, just as if they were to show up at the building. So I'll defer to Mr. Bailey and Mr. Probst, but I'm pretty sure that we've got that under wraps on how we get it set up for folks to be able to appear and speak at these public hearings next week.
That's right. So basically, what we did last time was they sent an email or called in to the city clerk to request that they be put on agenda, basically under the public hearing, or in the alternative, they can write a letter stating their preference for the public hearing that we can then read during that public hearing. So we'll attach that to the agenda when we send that out, whether it be to the press or to social media, and make sure that that's just redone and everybody still has their opportunity to speak for or against anything on the public hearing schedule.
Thank you.
Something we did.
It was a link that was to do it by 3 o'clock.
That's right. And as Miss Debbie handed me, yeah, we just did it with a link through basically SurveyMonkey, and that just shoots the public comments to us that way, and then of course we can allow other ways for people to dial in and get online if it's set up well in advance. Can't really pop in at the last second because Steve Conwell's trying to manage all the chaos behind the scenes, but we'll send this out again. It seemed to work okay last time.
Okay, can we be copied on that as well?
Of course.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Are there any other questions about Holly Hill?
I was wondering if there are any other businesses that have requested this or that have already been granted this by council in the past, or if we know of any.
Not this particular use, seeing as how it was just recently added to the list of potential residential businesses. But we do have a couple of other residential businesses that do exist. One of them is a hair salon. I'd have to look back in the records to see exactly what else exists, but it is something that has been granted in the past for other uses.
Okay. Do we know what the objections were of the folks who were at the planning and zoning, or is that not something we should discuss here? Should we wait and see if they come? How does that work?
No, actually, I mean, I'd love for them to speak for themselves, but mostly I think it was related to traffic concerns and the amount of space being used, and the misconception that a garage building that they built on their property would be being used for a commercial purpose, which is not the case. They'll be using a portion of their kitchen for this business. Again, limited by the zoning ordinance to 35% of the heated square footage of the house, or 700 square feet, whichever is smaller. And so that was some of the concerns. And then some other concerns that were brought up were site distance on driveway and things like that. Those exist whether this is granted or not. And the purpose of residential business is to have a seamless integration into the neighborhood without any commercial appearance to the operation whatsoever.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Tyler.
I was just gonna say, are customers going to be coming to the house, or I didn't see whether or not they were just gonna make the goods and sell them other places. I noticed that they were saying that they were gonna be doing festivals and stuff, but I just didn't know if folks were coming to the house to pick things up.
Yeah, I don't think that they're gonna have a significant amount of traffic, but it might be an occasional thing. They're allowed, I believe, 1 pickup and delivery a day, so they'd have to schedule it so they didn't exceed that. But there's not supposed to have any commercial appearance to the operation whatsoever. And it can be rescinded if it goes beyond the scope of what's intended.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kelly.
Sure.
So Patrick, you're saying that only one person a day can come and pick up goods, baked goods?
No, I think it refers to pickups and deliveries, which would be like somebody delivering flour or sugar or what have you. I mean, just like any other residence, you can have people come to your house that are there for whatever purpose. That could be social or could be business, but it's not supposed to have an appearance of any sort of commercial operation whatsoever.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And Patrick, I do agree with you. I think folks are just pretty hot about that building. I look at this in the way of running an accounting business or a hair salon out of the house. They think it's that building. So
right.
We just need to.
Those folks are in another business in town they have on Hubbard Street that's automotive related, and they're very automotive related type people. They're very into vehicles, and that garage, from my understanding, is so that they're not storing or working on any vehicles outside as hobbyists in the automotive field.
Well, thank you. That'll be interesting next week. Moving to the public hearing variance at 603 and 606 Alcovey. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir. Thank you again. This is a request by Mr. Dwayne Wilson on a property at those two addresses you just mentioned on Alcovey Street, requesting a variance of what was granted to him already, which he hasn't even attempted to develop under. He was originally granted a rezone to R1A zoning in order to accommodate a larger yield for his development. Went from a 14,000 square foot lot requirement to 10,000 square foot lot requirement, and now, even before having attempted to adjust his yield, is asking for a variance on that 10,000 square foot minimum that was originally granted. The recommendation from staff and from the Planning and Zoning Commission is for denial. There's a pretty significant background on the cover sheet. If you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them, or go about this however you see fit.
Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly?
I have a question for Mr. Kelly. It's not specific on this one, but includes this one on your description. There's a place, I guess, in the zoning ordinance where it talks about when people can ask for variance, and it lists 8 items that should be considered. And I know on this one, as well as the others, particularly if there's recommended for denial, you've highlighted those things that don't fit, under the requirement. Like this one has, 4 things, I think, out of the 8 that, if I understand correctly, that you highlighted that don't fit. And my question on that section of the ordinances, is there a requirement that in order for a variance to be requested, someone has to meet a certain number of those, or just how does that work as far as these 8 items are concerned?
Well, as far as I can tell you, they're just listed as the items for consideration in making your decision as far as how you vote on a matter. They're designed and put in the ordinance in order to allow for a consistent basis on which to make those decisions and recommendations. There's not a specific number that would be a threshold. I think you could, if any one of them was egregious enough, just base your opinion on one.
Okay, but I guess so. A person could be denied the variance based on one of those, or be approved based on 7 of them being, wrong. Either way, it's as long as it's just things for consideration. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And it's kind of what I need to go by in making my recommendations. And since I don't make the decision, the considerations are just that, considerations.
Okay, I just want to be sure I understood that section well.
Yes, sir.
Patrick, I do have one question. I printed off my information, and then right before the meeting, it mysteriously disappeared, and I'm sure it's sitting somewhere around my desk. But when you say he went from a 10,000 square foot lot to an 8,500, is that right? That's
yeah,
for how many of the total 13 lots? Is it 13 or 15 or?
It's 14, and it's for 2 of the lots that he couldn't get the square footage on those 2 lots to meet the rezone that he already received. And there's another lot that required some pretty good geometric gymnastics in order to get to the 10,000 square feet, which I was willing to go with him on. But the other 2 just weren't even. They're 15% less than what he already got, and he already got a 30% reduction in the requirement when he went from R1 to R1A.
But, so I understand it again. Right now, it's zoned R1A, so anything 10,000 square feet is approved as we speak today, correct? And what he's asking for 2 of those lots to be reduced to 8,500 instead of 10,000, correct?
Yes, sir. Rather than designing the project according to the parameters that were approved.
Patrick, what is the square footage of the lots in the legends?
I could not tell you off the top of my head. They had a significant reduction in square footage, but they also had a tremendous increase in the square footage of the houses required. And then that was for the original developer. And then Reliant Homes came in, had some different plans that they wanted to accommodate and ask for multiple variances on setbacks in order to accommodate those, which were granted as well. But that was them as a new owner coming into a situation of a pretty much defunct development and bringing it back to life.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any more questions for Patrick? That should be interesting too next week. Moving to public hearing variance 132 Pinecrest? 132 Pinecrest.
Yes, sir. Thank you again. These last 2 should be significantly less controversial and a little bit less time involved. But the applicant here is requesting a reduction in the setback on the street frontage on Pine Circle to 10 feet. The Planning Commission recommended approval, as does the staff, and that's due to the fact that they could have possibly gotten consideration of this without public hearing, due to the fact that they could by right be allowed the average setback of the block that they're on. And the only other house on that particular block between the street corners is basically built all the way up to the right of way. But in abundance of caution and make sure we went through all the right steps, we asked them to request this variance and go before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any questions for Patrick? Hearing none, we'll move to the public hearing rezone for 201 Bold Springs Avenue. Patrick?
Yes, sir. Thank you again. This is a rezone request from PRD to B2 on the old library building on Bold Springs Avenue. The recommendation of staff was to grant the rezone request to the lowest business commercial zoning classification of B1, although B2 was requested in order to be the least disruptive to the neighborhood, and also to allow for a potential rezone if they wanted to use other than what they've applied for. The B1 would accommodate the office use that they've indicated they intend to use, and again, it would be the least disruptive to the neighborhood. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I'm sorry, I have another question. I know that they had requested B2, you had recommended B1, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And
And is the request though coming before us next week is B2?
yeah, they're still requesting B2 and their original petition. The recommendation from staff and planning commission was to go with B1.
And the reason being, it will create a lesser impact to that neighborhood, correct? As a B1?
Yeah, the uses allowed in B1 are less impactful to a residential neighborhood than could be allowed in B2. But if they wanted to come back later and make it a portion of the Wayfair Inn, which is what they've indicated, don't know if that would be even permitted by the zoning ordinance, but they could always request that change of use at that time.
I guess that if I understood from the person doing this is that most of the properties in that neighborhood, vast majority of the properties in the neighborhood are already B2. And they're thinking B2 meets their needs, so that's what they're requesting. That am I correct with that?
They're B2 adjacent. Most of what's immediately around them is professional. And like I mentioned in the planning meeting, the cemetery is zoned R1A, but they're probably not going to be building any houses in it anytime soon. So the zoning that's adjacent can have some effect, but really depending on how the neighborhood's moving, it seems to be moving more towards a residential reuse than a professional or business reuse. So we're just trying to keep the recommendation in keeping with the trend.
I just make one comment on this as being the older person in this group that attended school there when that was the Linus Memorial Library. It was a very important part of the city of Monroe for the Linus family that gave the money for that to be built in honor of their son who was killed in the war. So I am glad to see that that building will be used again and made whole. So it's the Linus family did a lot for the city at that point in time, and that's important.
Mr. Bradley, just one thing to point out. You asked about the surrounding areas. The other corners of that intersection are all zone P, although I believe 2 of those 3 professionally zoned parcels are used as residences. And then the other block is all zone B2, but all 4 of those parcels are all currently being used as residential purposes. So just for my quick review of the zoning map, there's only one B2 parcel in the immediate vicinity of this property that is actually being used for a B2 purpose.
They're zone B2, but not being used for that purpose. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct. There's 4 houses. There's 4 houses on that block across the way that are all B2, but all residential. Miss Adams' house is zoned B2, but is residential use. The apartments there are zoned B2, but residential use. The old Sycamore Square is zoned B2, but residential use. And if you'll recall, back in the day, only because I'm familiar with this of having lived there, and Mr. Bradley now lives there, Miss Edith Nunnally and others on that side of William Street came to the council and downzoned that side of William Street from B1 down to P professional, so that that side of William Street matched with the other side of William Street. Basically, all of the William Street, Bold Springs Avenue, Midland Avenue, and North Broad area is all zone P professional. And then you just have some B2 as you get further into the city, and there on North Midland and North Madison. So you actually have more professional zone parcels surrounding this property than you do B2. And certainly in use. There's only one that I can see within 500 yards or more that's actually being used for a true B2 use, which is that corner market convenience store there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. I was pulling up the zoning map to go through that, pretty much that same litany. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kelly about 201 Bold Springs? Hearing none, we'll talk about that next week. Patrick, I'm coming back to you with 455 Vine Street, a preliminary plat approval.
Yes, sir. This one should be relatively simple. This is an application for preliminary plat approval. Review has indicated that it is in substantial conformance with the development regulations and the zoning ordinance and the conditions of their zoning. There are R1A conditional. Again, this plat is in substantial conformance. We have discussed with the property owner some modifications that may be beneficial to the project, including rerouting some traffic with their mail kiosk and reconfiguring some of the streets and lots down near the sewer pump station in order to try and alleviate some of the odoriferous emissions that might bother people that move in there. So they've agreed to consider that, and they are going to work on doing that if they can, and if they do, it'll still be in substantial performance with the development regulations. There shouldn't be any diminishing of lot count, which is 220 units.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly?
I have a couple questions. As far as traffic, I know you were talking about the kiosk traffic, but just as far as traffic in and out, are there any thoughts about folks who are planning on dual access, both from Alcovey and from 11? That's kind of the idea. And just because it's my first go at this whole thing, 220 houses over there, how does that affect traffic in those areas? Does anybody actually know what that kind of looks like, and are we prepared for that?
The Vine Street is a county road. We'd probably have to do a traffic study to determine that fully. They are going to be required to install turn lanes and XL and decel lanes to accommodate coming and going. Traffic on that road is relatively light at this time. And again, it would just be peak comings and goings, I'm sure, with typical going to work and returning and going to school and such as that.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as sewer and water are concerned, I know that's something we're keeping an eye on as we're using our bond to sort of help boost that and everything. 220 new houses. What kind of impact does that have on our sewer and water?
We'll be good. That sewer main was replaced many years ago. I say many years ago, back in 2004, 2005. So that whole main trunk line that runs in the rear of that neighborhood, it's all been redone. It's all been increased in size. So we're good. Everything's fine.
Yeah, I also want to note on that note, Mr. Gregory, that this was already taken into account. Actually, originally at 286 lots, been downgraded to 220 lots just through your preliminary engineering here. So that's a pretty significant reduction in yield already. But yeah, we had already planned on it based on that original 286. So we're actually in pretty good shape, all things considered, for this development.
Okay. And do we have a good relationship?
This developer came in 18, maybe 24 months ago to have this initially approved with that R1A. So we went R1A for approval with that one, also with Stone Creek, and then we put a hiatus on approving any more of those till we can get all of our ducks in a row. So we're real lucky that Mr. Dixon has dropped those lots down, but it ought to be nice.
Okay, and we've got a good relationship there, a good working relationship.
Absolutely.
We do. He's a good man.
We do. We just talked to him earlier, Pat and I did, about making a few amendments here and there, and I'm glad to have a good working partner there.
Great, fantastic. I think that'll be a good use of that area around Vine Street and everything, but I just want to make sure that we're doing as best we can, especially putting that many folks in there. But I think that's a great thing.
Thank you. I appreciate where you're coming from too, Tyler. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I'd like to ask Mr. Kelly for an update on the Church Street project. They're into the development stages of that project, and just wondered, can you give us an update?
Oh, on the Meadows property?
Yes.
Yeah, they're just continuing to install infrastructure and get ready to get all their all of that done and put on a final plat in order to come before you for final plat approval, and so we can record the subdivision and of the lots and start issuing building permits when they're ready.
And that is an R1, 100-foot lots,
Yes, they went with
1,600
strictly,
square foot minimum. Is that correct?
yes, they went with the strictly R1 zoning requirements on that property. There may be some delays as far as installing some infrastructure or getting some supplies. Brian may be able to speak to that. He's got some sort of time frame that they haven't even applied for with him yet, as far as getting some of that infrastructure in. So if he might want to speak to that, I'd be glad to hear it too.
Not hearing Brian anywhere.
On the Vine Street note, I'd just like to thank the staff for looking ahead and going ahead and making that corridor out of the city 35 miles an hour. I think that will also really help the impact of the traffic there.
Yeah, and on that note, it's a little bit off topic, but to go along with what you're saying, staff is continuing to look at speed reductions and studying different kinds of traffic calming and in that whole area, not to mention other areas of the city, but we're looking at that Alcovey Street stretch because there's several thousand homes in that general vicinity that come in and out of the city each day through that corridor. So it is an item on our radar, and we'll be talking about that pretty soon.
Thank
Good.
you.
Yeah. Do we have an idea of a start date, ballpark?
On this project, I haven't got one from the developer yet. I'm not sure exactly what his intentions are. He just wanted to get through this portion and go to the design and engineering stage.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any more questions? Hearing none, we'll move to the second reading of the Personnel Policy Ordinance Amendment regarding appeal and grievance procedures. Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. We talked about this last month. Essentially, we're changing up the grievance committee a little bit to where we also include a public hearing officer, and this will be nominated by the mayor and council for one licensed attorney with a minimum of 10 years practice. And, of course, this sets out a tiered grievance procedure through our departments. But, again, this will be for the second reading of it.
Are there any questions for Mr. Probst? Hearing none, moving to the resolution of the Open Records Officer, Logan.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, we do this each year. This sets out the city administrator to be the Open Records Officer and the city clerk to be that secondary or backup Open Records Officer.
Are there any questions about that? This is standard.
Pretty standard stuff.
Protocol. Moving to the approval of the election qualifying fees, Mr. Probst.
Yes, so now we have an election ahead of us later this year. We need to set those election qualifying fees for the general election. That'll be set at $180 for the offices of the council members in districts 3, 6, and 8, and $216 for the office of the mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Probst about that? Hearing none, moving to the LAP resolution, the CDBG requirement. Mr. Bailey, are you still here?
Thank you.
Okay.
This is a requirement given to us by the DCA. It's in conjunction with the 2020 CDBG award and also backwards affects the 2018 award for a language access plan. Essentially just a special condition that's required to be put in there to allow for alternatives to an English printed information and directions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Bailey? Hearing none, we'll talk more about that next week too. Just a couple more things, and then I'll give a quick update. A couple of action items for tonight. One, we need an election of a vice mayor. Do I have a motion?
Move Mr. Bradley, Larry Bradley be renominated.
I have a motion by Mr. Nathan Little. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Crawford. Is there any discussion? Welcome, Myosha. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Congratulations, Mr. Bradley. Moving to the appointment of the council representative to the DDA. I need a motion to appoint Ross Bradley as the council representative to the Downtown Development Authority.
A motion to appoint Ross Bradley.
I have a motion by Mr. Gregory. Do I hear a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Crawford. Right,
No.
Marcia?
By Lee Mel.
Lee? Sorry, Lee. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Couple of things. You know, we've been beating COVID to death. I understand. And we're all trying to do our part to, I guess, live cleaner lives, focus on sanitation, focus on social distancing. Logan and I have about 6 feet between us. We're keeping Miss Kirk way back there. Larry Ebert from the hospital told me a couple of weeks ago, and he had reiterated from previous conversations that the way it works with the way this virus has spread, we see the spread in Atlanta, we see it immediately move to Gwinnett County, and about 2 to 3 weeks later it hits us. Now, meeting last week with the governor's office, we have 3 of the 10 fastest growing states in the country are all around us. We have Tennessee, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and frankly, Alabama is, number 12 or 13. So it's going to come here, and it has obviously hit here pretty hard. Most of the beds in our zone are full. And I don't want to give exact numbers for Piedmont because that's not my place, and that's something that Larry can do on his own at his own time. But it is something that we need to continue to focus on with discussions with the public, discussions with restaurateurs. We've kind of gotten a little bit lax. And today's call with GMA asked for us to push a little bit harder just to make sure that folks are taken a little bit more seriously. The good news, even though the hospital visits are up, deaths are down over the last couple of weeks. They're not down by much, but they are down. So we're feeling pretty good with that. I have the list of vaccine priority levels. So we are 49th in the country in rolling that out. And I don't know what's taken us longer than any other state. But I do know that the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are very, very difficult to carry. You have to store them at negative 80 degrees. We have the one from AstraZeneca that's coming on board that can be stored in the refrigerator, good for up to 6 months. That's probably going to be the one that hits our tier 3 that we really get to the mass drive-throughs. Carl Morrow with emergency management has been working with public health to set up those distribution locations. So we should know something in the next couple of weeks. And I really don't think those mass distributions are going to take place until either late March or early April. But as of right now, if you're a healthcare worker, you're a resident or staff at a nursing facility, or you're 65 and over, you're with compromised position, you are able to go get the vaccine. It's 2 shots. I think 1, and then maybe 10 days later it's the second. You have to schedule that through the Department of Public Health in Athens. 1B more than likely will be very much the same way. And then when we get to number 2, that's people in essential infrastructure jobs, or those who are moderate or higher risk, some younger diabetics and things like that. So folks are going to ask you. Folks have been calling The hospital, they've been really lighting up. Morgan Memorial as well. I had a conversation with them yesterday. So we just really have to point the general public to Athens. They can sign up online, but mainly they need to call, and it's all appointment based. That's about as much as we know about it right now. Any questions, anything that I need to ask Larry, anybody at GMA, anything on your minds? Hearing none, I'm sure we'll talk more about this in the days, weeks, and unfortunately months to come. That being said, I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Lee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Little. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Good night, everybody. Thank you.